Welcome to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Caden Aguiar, bringing you the latest NFL and NBA news, as well as college sports news and the local Daytona State sports news. We have episodes every single Friday, and we have quite a bit of topics to go over today, starting with top 10 teams going into week 1 of the NFL season. Following up, that will be the top 10 quarterbacks going into week 1 of the NFL. Then we have a recap of the college football games from this past weekend, and then NFL matchups, analysis, and takes from the one and only. So let's start off with the top 10 teams going into week 1 of the NFL, and honestly, this list was hard to make. There's a lot of teams that are going to be competing this year, and I kind of had to pick and choose, who I think is really going to compete in either conference. There's a lot of solid teams in this league now. We kind of saw last year how teams went and won 13 games, and there were some teams that won like 3. So there's a lot of competition that's going to be going on this season. I think it's going to be a fun season to watch and see unfold this year. But anyways, let's get into our top 10 teams going into week 1. At number 10, I have the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to start off by saying they have a young, talented defense with a ton of upside. Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk. Those are the biggest names that come to my mind when I think of this Rams defense. Kobe Turner, he's going into his 3rd year. He is outstanding for this Rams D-line, and putting Jared Verse on the edge only helps them. He was, obviously he was Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, but he gets a lot of pressures. And I think this year he can really turn those pressures into sacks. This line's defense, we saw it unfold in the Minnesota Vikings game. They created a lot of turnovers, and they really were in control that whole game. Let's shift over to the offense. I know about the Matt Stafford injury. I don't think it's going to affect him. I can understand that, especially at an age like him, he has injuries, and it might affect his gameplay, but Matt Stafford is a very gifted athlete in the NFL. As far as arm talent goes, he can hit any receiver at any angle. So, especially when you surround them with 2 phenomenal receivers in Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, you got the team, man. You got the team to compete for an NFC championship, and honestly, they could make a run in the NFC as far as maybe even making it to a Super Bowl. I partly believe this because they're an all-around good team with no weaknesses. I think they're solid at every single position on the field, and I just think they can really compete, make a run, give the Eagles a run for their money, But anyways, at number 9, I have the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix, we saw him last season. He looked great. Sean Payton, coaching this team, I really love that. He has some weapons around him now. Cortland Sutton, Evan Ingram, he's even got J.K. Dobbins coming in, who had a breakout year last year, playing most of the games throughout the season for the Chargers, and he was dominant when he played for the Chargers. So this Broncos team on offense is starting to put it together, and combine that with, I think, a top 3 defense this year, not only because of their offseason additions, but to what they already have. Patrick Surtain, he is the best defensive player in the league right now. You also have Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw that came in, which really helps. Their veteran presence. They've made it to a Super Bowl. They know what it's like to play in big games. So I like the look of this Denver Broncos team, and they made it to the playoffs last year and added more players to make them compete more. So I like the direction that this Broncos team is going in, and that's why they're number 9. I see them competing in the AFC this year. I feel like they can give some teams a run for their money. So at number 8, I have the Tampa Bay Bucks, and I said, wherever the Denver Broncos are, I think the Bucks need to be just slightly above them. I think they're in slightly similar scenarios. They're competing, and they've proven that they can beat teams in their conference. We need to take a look at Baker Mayfield and say, hey, this guy's probably an MVP candidate this year. Just look at the weapons he has around him. He could be a passing yards leader this year. I think he could throw for 5,000 yards. When the Bucs receiving room is healthy, they have the best receiving room. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka. Don't get me started on Emeka Egbuka. I think he's the most talented receiver on the Bucs right now. Jalen McMillan, Tez Johnson. Let's talk about the defense. You bring in Hassan Reddick. That's a big boy move. That's a Todd Bowles type of move. Can he set the tone for this defense in this pass rush? You already have a Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey. You have a young Yaya Diaby. We could really see some strides. Let's clear the room here. This Bucs D-line was, they were outstanding at the end of last season. And you bring in a guy like Hassan Reddick, if he plays of half what he was in his prime, you could see them compete and be one of the best defenses in the league. Zion McCollum, Tyke Smith, Antoine Winfield, Jamel Dean, they have solid secondary who can stop good receivers. So they have depth at every position. I look at this Tampa Bay Bucs team and I say, why not them to the Super Bowl? Why not? They have the weapons. They have the team to do it. They just need to put it together, especially under a new offensive coordinator. At 7, I have the Washington Commanders. They were huge in this offseason because they had to trade. Terry McLaurin wanted to get a trade. And they did great in the fact that they re-signed him. And, that was an operation. That was a whole big thing. And they finally reached a deal to extend him. He deserved all of that money. He was fantastic last year. You bring in Deebo Samuel as well. That's a solid wide receiver duo right there. Deebo Samuel adds an extra element to any offense in the league, wherever he goes, just because of how versatile he is. There's an old defense on that team. They're going to disrupt all year long. I know Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, I know they're old, but, let's say they can get a couple stops a game. I think, the Commanders can win most of their games here. And I'll talk about this later, but, year 2, Jaden Daniels, they decide their success going forward. He needs to step up like he did in year 1. I partly brought that up because we looked at a guy like CJ Stroud. We considered him a top 5 QB last year. And heading into year 2, we had high hopes for him. And then he comes out and, he plays solid. Not great. It was okay. But I hope that doesn't happen to Jaden Daniels because I see this guy and he has unlimited talent. And he's got the mind for it. So, we'll see if Jaden Daniels can produce as well as he did this year. Or last year, sorry. At number 6, I have the Detroit Lions. I think they have the best offense in the NFL. Weapons on weapons. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, David Montgomery, and Sam Laporta. Top 5 wide receiver, top 3 running back. You have a guy that can take the top off the defense with Jameson Williams. a top 5 tight end with Laporta probably. And, I look at this team and I say they are really a solid defense away from winning a Super Bowl. You heard it. They get a couple stops a game. I think that this Lions squad can score just about any time they want to. It's crazy. One thing I will say is I am iffy about their coaching staff changes. Aaron Glenn to the Jets, Ben Johnson to the Bears. We don't really know what's in hold for the Lions, and that's partly why they're at 6 and not higher on my list, because I don't know what to expect from them as far as defensive and offensive schemes go this year. But Lions at 6. At 5, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, the runner-ups from last year. They have the most dominant defense in the NFL. I think they're still top 1. They played amazing. That defense will always keep the Chiefs in a game, even with their lackluster offense. Patrick Mahomes didn't necessarily play that well last year. I'm going to get into that later, but he always finds a way to win, and that's one thing you can't take away from him. So, combined with the defense keeping them in games, and then Patrick Mahomes, knowing what to do in crunch time, that's awesome. One thing I will say though, Rashee Rice is out for 6 games this year, and Rashee Rice before he got injured, he was looking awesome. He gave me kind of like a Deebo Samuel vibe just based off of, his yards after catch. He's awesome in open space. You have Xavier Worthy. I like him. He's an explosive play guy. Travis Kelce, we'll see if he plays good this year. He is engaged to Taylor Swift now, so let's see if I can perform better. Pacheco's back off injury. I mean, their offensive line has some issues. It's just, it's kind of sloppy. It is kind of sloppy, but that defense is super dominant, and that's why I have to put him at number 5. At number 4, though, and I fed into the hype on this one, I can't lie, the Green Bay Packers. 2 words to describe, why they're at number 4, partly. Micah Parsons. He fulfilled probably the biggest issue that they had going at the end of last season, just last season in general. He fulfilled the pass rush issue for sure. I think their defense is very talented. Xavier McKinney, best safety last year, in my opinion, between him and Jesse Bates. But Xavier McKinney, Edrin Cooper, Quay Walker, Rashawn Gary, and now the addition of Micah Parsons. You look at this defense and you say, this defense could be really talented, really good. Jordan Love, I want to talk about him a little bit. He's a solidified starter in this league, and he has a dangerous rush attack in Josh Jacobs. It kind of takes some pressure off of him. The reason they're at 4 and not like 2 or 1 maybe is because they don't have a wide receiver 1. And, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, Christian Watson, and now you bring in Matthew Golden. We'll see if Matthew Golden can step up and really make him a number 1 option on this team, because there was a case of the dropsies on the Packers last year. And, that's no good. They do have Tucker Kraft, which I do like. I do like him. But you need a reliable receiver, and Matthew Golden could be that guy. But, obviously we are unsure as of right now. Packers at 4. At number 3, I have the Buffalo Bills. They have the most valuable player in the league, probably the best player in the league, with Josh Allen. Around them is a young, but they're raw offense around them. James Cook just got extended. Congrats to him. Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. You got some guys. I don't think their offensive line is too bad, but Josh Allen can do a lot with a little. So, I believe in Josh Allen. I think he's going to pick up right where he left off last year. And we need to talk about this defense as well. You add in Joey Bosa. That's rock solid. Love, new change for him. Let's see if he can produce like he did in LA. Greg Rousseau, easily, he's a young pass rusher. He is awesome. Matt Milano, I think he's the most underrated linebacker in the league, maybe even most underrated defender in the league. He really keeps that defense going. And, the last point I'm going to make here is that Buffalo is the KC Killers. If there's a team that's going to beat Kansas City, it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. They did it one time last season, and it was super impressive. Number 2, Philadelphia Eagles, your winners last year. They have the most talented and stacked roster in the NFL. Problem with them is, I don't really see them repeating. They have a top 5 offense in the NFL with Saquon, Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, best offensive line and tackles. Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, they are stacked on offense. And, you can just look at their offense and say, hey, they're probably going to be a top 10 team. And then you get into the defense. Quinyon Mitchell, Zach Bond, Cooper DeJean, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Jalix Hunt. These are playmakers. Nolan Smith. You can name every single guy on the Eagles roster, and I think that those are good defensive players. That's why they won the Super Bowl last year. Their defensive pressure was insane, and they're going to do the same thing this year. Saquon Barkley. Amazing. We'll see if he can repeat as well. But there is one team that I believe in more than the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, hear me out here. They made the divisional round last year, and they built in the offseason. I think they had a fantastic offseason. They bring in DeAndre Hopkins, reliable pass catcher for Lamar, and, takes a little pressure off of Flowers and Bateman. I think those 3 together, by the way, that'll be a nice for Lamar to throw to, for sure. The big move was bringing in Jair Alexander. That immediately puts him top 3 in secondaries. And then you add Malachi Starks in the draft. That's highway robbery. They have the best secondary in the NFL. It's not close. I think they can make a deep push in the AFC conference. They are in my Super Bowl prediction, I will say. So those are my top 10 teams going into week 1. We'll see how this pans out, though. Now, I do want to transition into another top 10 list. Go top 10 QBs going into week 1. And, we're going to start off with the same quarterback that was in the top 10 list, Matthew Stafford. Like I said, most gifted arm in the NFL. He gives me Aaron Rodgers vibes now because he's done his winning. It's just, can he get over that hill? Can he win again? And, he knows what he needs to do as a vet and a Super Bowl champ to really make this Rams team shine and flourish. Number 9, Jaden Daniels. Sophomore year for him. And that's why he's at number 9 for me right now. Sophomore year, QB struggles. That's a real thing. He has 2 elite athletes to get the ball to in Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel now. He's really impressive with the ball in his hand. His ability to extend plays and his arm and just everything. He's a very gifted athlete. And, we'll see how he produces this year, but he's going to be at 9 right now on my list. Maybe it'll change later. We'll see come week 1, 8, I do have Jared Goff. Pocket passer. Pocket passers are starting to become rare. And, I think Jared Goff does it very well. He has 2 great receivers and finds ways to give them touches. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams really finding his way to becoming an elite receiver. he has his fair share of winning in his career. Obviously his stint with the Lions is amazing right now, but I think we often forget that he's made it to a Super Bowl before with the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously it was a snoozer bowl, but he did make it. And I think he can bounce back this year. Late last season, he started to fall off a little bit. He started throwing some more picks than he usually does. And, that's a no-no. But I think Jared Goff, he's starting to become a veteran, and I think he realizes that, hey, I need to be better with the football in my hands. 7, I have Justin Herbert. This is probably the hottest take I'm going to have all episode. Justin Herbert, he's overshadowed from last year. He had a poor playoff performance, down season last year. But we have to realize that he is one of the most talented young QBs in the game. The amount of rookie records he has broke, the amount of, the accolades he has had at such a young age is crazy. There's a lot to say about him. And, I have respect for him. I've always put him top 5, and then Harbaugh gets there. He has a different offense, and, now it's like, Justin Herbert's just, he's kind of like a point guard role. And, he makes good decisions with the ball for the most part, and I think for Herbert to really shine, he needs his receivers to step up a little bit more. Ladd McConkey started playing great end of last season. You bring in, veteran Keenan Allen. You have some weapons around him. And then, you have a decent backfield that will obviously help take pressure off of him. But, I think Herbert is still a top 10 QB. And I'm going to stand by that. I know a lot of people do not think that now, but I'm gonna die on that hill. At number 6, I have Patrick Mahomes. I was just talking about him earlier, how, last year he was down last year, and Geno Smith did play better than them last year, but, last year was an outlier for him. It was a down year, and we need to take in consideration that what he has done with explosive offenses in the past. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champ, and I think that's robbery if I don't put him in this top 10 list here. Like I said, he will win even if you think there is no way of winning the game. He'll still find a way to come back and win. He keeps his team in the game regardless, and he plays a street ball style of QB. Very gifted. Probably the most talented quarterback right now. Argued, but he plays a different style of QB than anyone else in the league. Number 5, I have Baker Mayfield here. Fun pick here. Gunslinger. He threw the most picks last year. Yes, he did. But he also threw, I think he was top 3 in passing yards, top 3 in touchdown passes, and I look at that and I'm like, okay, this guy is the real deal. I do want to mention that he is a tough guy and will block for any guy on his team. He will try and lay out any defensive player if that frees up Bucky Irving for a 30-yard rush. It's crazy. Love watching the guy, but he's not the most gifted of athletes either, and he can still extend plays really well. I think that Joey Bosa play where he was stiff-armed him and still got the ball to Rachaad White for a first down in crunch time on 4th down, that was a clutch play. And, I just want to say that Baker Mayfield has found a home in Tampa, and he will be there for a long time, and people need to get ready for that. So, Baker at 5, I think he'd be an MVP candidate this year. And, Baker Mayfield, awesome. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. Another kind of point guard pick here. I think that's what is mostly what's the word around Jalen Hurts is he's like a point guard, he's a winner. His rushing ability really opens up his passing game a lot. He's quick with the ball. He makes good decisions for the most part, and he also has elite receivers. He has the best, a great offense. And when you can get the ball to your guys, we kind of think of this. I kind of think of this like a Brock Purdy in some ways. When they made it to a Super Bowl a couple years ago, they had a fantastic offense, and Brock Purdy was just the point guard of that team. Made good decisions. He just played, man, and he won. So I got Jalen Hurts at 4. He really proved himself last year as a winner. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts at 4. Number 3, Lamar Jackson. I do want to say it's impressive when you're top 7 in passing yards and tied second in passing touchdowns and is still known as a running quarterback in this league. Let that sink in. I think he got over his playoff struggles from previous years. We took a look at that. Previous years, you can see him fold kind of, especially against that game. The AFC Championship against Kansas City kind of folded. It was a mix of also his receivers dropping the ball. But anyways, he's gotten over those playoff struggles. And obviously, he is one of the most gifted, if not the most gifted athlete in the NFL. So, Lamar Jackson will be right back at the top this year. As usual, he also wins. But let's see if he can win postseason games now. That's what will make him number 1 in my eyes. If he can win in playoff games, that will make him number 1 for me. Now, number 2. And usually he's my number 1. He's been my number 1 QB for the past 4 years, I think. Joe Burrow. One of the most successful pure pocket passers in today's game. And you got him, Matt Stafford, and Jared Goff in that list for me of successful pocket passers. But the arm talent and decision making is incredible. Incredible. He can make his elite receivers flourish, and, he obviously scores tons of points every Sunday, and, he definitely will this year. He'll probably have to average about 42 points a game for the Bengals to win a game because, that defense is something. But at my number 1, Josh Allen. He was MVP for a reason. You take him off that offense, and, what's their identity? Really, what is their identity? The rushing ability is strong and makes him a threat to every single offense. He's coming off a strong season with limited turnovers on his behalf. That was my biggest grudge with Josh Allen, in past seasons. He was careless with the football, and, now he's coming off a season where he was amazing on turnovers. Didn't turn over the ball much. And, he can make something out of a play that was nothing. So I think he could be the best quarterback this year. Again, probably run it back, but that's my top 10 QBs list. And I feel really confident about it. I know there's some hot takes in there, but we'll see how it pans out, just like the top 10 teams list. Now, let's also transition back to the college football games this weekend. Now, there's a lot to talk about here. Lots of games that I was shocked to watch, and that's the beauty of college football. You never know what to expect. You could see James Madison go into a crowded Georgia stadium, and they'll compete. I mean, it's crazy what you see on the weekends. But I do want to talk about USF versus Boise State. This game really kicked off my college football season. It was a fun game. The loss of Ashton Jeanty shows throughout this game. Jeanty had 7 yards per carry last year. And now you're splitting reps at running back for Boise State, and they can't even get close to 7 yards per carry. USF defense was very impressive throughout this football game. They only gave up 7 points to a ranked Boise State team, and they had some takeaways too. The biggest thing I do want to say about this game, and I think I'll talk about him a lot throughout this season, this college football season, is Byrum Brown. Remember that name. He is one of my Heisman candidates coming into this season, and it really shows in this game. He's a great competitor, has all the physical tools to be successful this year. He had some angry runs, and it looked awesome. He looked awesome week 1. We'll see how he plays week 2 against UF. I'm really curious to see if he'll fold under pressure or live up to the moment, give him a solid game. I think he can. The Boise State offense has to find their identity again to find some success this season. I don't really think their defense was awful, but in football, when your offense is scoring 7 points and is in a dry spell and can't score, your defense starts to get discouraged. And that's what makes them not, put low effort into tackling. It's just, I feel like it's like a go through the motions type of deal. Byrum Brown went 16 for 24 for 210 yards, and then he had 14 carries for 43 yards and 2 touchdown runs. Keyshawn Singleton, 5 receptions for 93 yards and a touchdown. He's somebody to watch out for this season. He played really well as Chas Nimrod, the transfer from Tennessee, with 3 receptions for 96 yards. The Boise State quarterback Maddox Madsen, 25 for 46, 225 yards and a touchdown pass, as well as 11 carries for 31 yards. And you have Latrell Caples, the receiver for Boise State, with 4 receptions for 58 yards. On this Boise State team, there's not really a solidified weapon right now on this team. I think they'll find it later in the year, but right now they're trying to find who was their guy, and I think that Maddox Madsen really shows some dual threat ability. I think they should use him more on those runs. Give him some plays. But, week 1, 34-7, USF. Big game here, Texas versus Ohio State. I did watch this game, and I picked Ohio State to win, actually on my parlay. Shout out to Ohio State. And, I'll show why I picked Ohio State to win. First off, it's at Ohio State. That's a hard stadium to go into and find success in. Arch Manning folded under pressure. He made bad decisions in crunch time, 17 for 30, 170 yards, a passing touchdown, but he had an interception. Almost had more. If they didn't get called back, he almost had more. We do need to take a reality check, and this Ohio State team won the national championship last year. Of course, it's not going to be Arch Manning's best game. He'll be fine in the long run. This game was a very defensive game. Very impressed by how ready these defenses are to start the season. Jeremiah Smith was bottled up for most part during this game, 6 receptions for 43 yards. He's somebody that I regard as the best player in the country, struggling against this Texas defense. So, shout out to the Texas defense, but, I think if Arch Manning can really put it together, they could be dangerous still. And that's why they were ranked number 1 in the preseason poll. Julian Sayin, 13 for 20, 126 yards with a passing touchdown. Didn't play bad for his first career start against the number 1 team in the country. He didn't play bad. CJ Donaldson, 19 carries for 67 yards and a rushing touchdown. Work him. That feed him the ball. He was carrying the ball decently, and that was Ohio State's game plan coming in. Run the ball, extend our drives, and I think we have a good shot against this Texas team. No receiver stood out to me this game on either side of the football. It was a physical rushing game, 14-7. Ohio State picks up the dub. All right. This is going to be my favorite game to call. Alabama versus Florida State. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't very happy to see Florida State beat Alabama. Tommy Castellanos. Who knew that we needed him? He was very cocky before the game. And, he backed it up. No one could stop him. Saban couldn't save them, is the motto. 9 for 14, 152 yards, and 16 carries for 78 yards and a rushing touchdown. He looked unstoppable, guys. You had to watch it. You had to be there to watch it. He looked unstoppable. Ty Simpson, he played his first game. 23 for 43, 254 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I did like his poise during this game. I think they'll be fine offensively for Alabama. I think Ty Simpson has some potential. He just needs to settle in a little more. I was excited to talk about this guy, Jeremy Bernard. I'm coming with a bold take, and he's the most underrated receiver in the country with 8 receptions for 146 yards. I looked at his numbers last season, and I was like, who is this guy? And I looked him up. He had 700 yards last season, and I think he had a few touchdowns. And I'm starting to look at Jeremy Bernard. I'm like, this guy's underrated. His draft stock will be going up this year, I think. He reminds me of Deebo Samuel, the way they used him, tries to mix him up in the backfield. He was the only offensive player on Bama that was effective this whole game. Florida State defensively came to play under this Tony White-led group. Lots of bend but don't break play. Every time the ball got in the red zone for Alabama, besides the first drive, they stopped them. They stuffed them. And that Tony White game plan was amazing. I just want to take a moment, and these coordinators that came in for Florida State played, they called it an amazing game. Gus Malzahn called it an amazing game, and as well as Tony White. Mekhi Danzy for Florida State, impressive athlete as a redshirt freshman. 3 carries for 56 yards and a rushing touchdown. He could take a top off of defense, and that was a really fun to watch him do those jet sweeps, and keep going back to that look. Nobody could stop him on that. Not just him, but there's more speedsters on this FSU offense. Jalen Lucas with a huge play in the third quarter, and Squirrel White with a crazy 40-yard catch early in the game. Like I said, I liked Gus Malzahn's playing for this FSU offense. Keep pounding the football. 49 carries for 230 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Lots of different looks that they gave Bama's defense. They put a lot of guys in the motion, and I liked that look. I did a lot. Gavin Sawchuk is a physical beast. Huge play down the stretch to get in the end zone to seal the game. Ryan Williams, he was concussed, but he didn't really do well this game. Same, just like Jeremiah Smith, 5 receptions for 30 yards. Another guy I consider one of the best players in the country. We'll see if he comes back off of concussion, but sad to hear that. Could Tommy Castellanos be a dark horse Heisman candidate? I think that's a question a lot of people are asking in the college football world. I think if he keeps up this production, he could be up there with the best. Cade Klubnik, Drew Allar, lots of guys that are in Heisman candidates, and I think Tommy Castellanos played better than them. One last point I'm going to take from this game is any game can be won at a sold-out Doak Campbell Stadium. That stadium was super loud. I heard it through the TV. It was super loud. 31-17 win for the Seminoles. Long Island University versus University of Florida. nail-biter game, 55-0 win against Long Island. Vernell Brown, let's talk some social media real quick. Vernell Brown, oh my goodness. Early catch of the year candidate. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that catch was insane. Lagway picks up right where he left off. And Jaden Bach, 9 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Dominant win for UF. Week 2 against USF. I will be watching that game for sure. LSU versus Clemson. I called this game the tone setter for the college football season. I think this game really determined how the college football playoff will shake out. Cade Klubnik, he was my prediction for the Heisman this season. He struggled this game against a stout LSU defense. He went 19 for 38 with 230 yards, no passing touchdowns, and an interception. Brian Wesco and TJ Moore with some flashes for his Clemson receiving room with 8 receptions and for 121 yards together. Cade Klubnik will be fine. He still shows me some NFL potential. He got the ball out to so many people during this game. So it's hard to really pick apart, what's the main guy for this Clemson offense. And that's a good thing about Cade Klubnik. The best quarterbacks in the NFL, they spread the ball out to different people. Nussmeier played better than Cade Klubnik. I was surprised. 28 for 38 for 232 yards and a touchdown pass. Caden Durham with 17 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 receptions for 22 yards. So he was getting fed the ball, and he was running really well, as well as a touchdown. Aaron Anderson shined with 6 receptions for 99 yards. And a 17-10 LSU win. Shocker. But this could very well be a game that is played in the college football playoff. Notre Dame versus Miami. I'm not a huge Carson Beck guy. But he looked very good in this game. 20 for 31, 205 yards, and a pair of touchdown passes. Mark Fletcher and Sharmar Brown with a combined 30 carries for 120 yards. And Malachi Toney, really impressive to me. Remember his name, very talented. 6 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown for the freshman. The freshman on the other side for Notre Dame, CJ Carr, didn't play bad in his first start. He has a lot of poise and confidence that I like from him. He doesn't get flustered easily. He didn't play awful. Jeremiah Love, I was disappointed in. He had a good year last year, but he just had 10 carries for 33 yards and 4 receptions for 26 yards. I do not know what happened. I thought Jeremiah Love, best running back in the country. I think it's kind of controversial, but he just didn't play well. And maybe Miami's defense just bottled him up, but one bright spot on this Notre Dame team, Jordan Faison, electric, lightning in a bottle, human joystick, call him those names. 5 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown. I think Notre Dame will be fine in the long run as well. Runner-up last year in the national championship. CJ Carr will become more comfortable, and it will compete for a spot in the college football playoff. 24-27, Miami takes the dub. VTech versus South Carolina. This was a very weird game to me. I didn't know what to think. It was an electric South Carolina offense with Lenora Sellers, who is gifted, and Nick Harbor as well. Sellers went 12 for 19 for 209 yards and a touchdown, as well as 13 carries for 25 yards and a rushing touchdown. So, dual threat is Lenora Sellers. Nick Harbor, freak athlete. 3 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown. I consider him a top receiver this year in college football. This is probably the harshest thing this episode. Kyron Jones. Bad. Looked bad. No way to sugarcoat it. 15 for 35 with no passing touchdowns. And not one, but 2 interceptions with a QBR of 44. Let's back it up, man. Let's back it up. I think the problem is I think they have solid receivers over in VTech too. Donovan Green, Aiden Green. But who is going to throw them the ball? Not Kyron Drones. Not him. VTech's defense was solid, but at some point, if the offense isn't producing, your defense gets discouraged, man. 24-11, South Carolina wins. I mean, that game was weird. And now we're going to get into NFL Week 1 matchups, takes, and analysis, starting with Cowboys versus Eagles. Can the Cowboys stop a loaded offense in the Eagles, and can the offense keep them off the field? Can Dak Prescott extend drives? You bring in George Pickens. You have Jaden Blue, who is an amazing athlete. Javonte Williams. You have a solid offense. Keep the Eagles' offense off the field. Extend drives. Get first downs. They could compete. Dak Prescott has a lot of pressure on him this season to be that guy for this team. You have the weapons. Do something with it. How does the loss of Micah Parsons affect your defense? I don't know what their identity is on defense. They have Demarion Overshown. I think he's very underrated. But, who's going to come up clutch for this Cowboys defense? The Eagles definitely have the momentum in this game. It's a division rival game, so I expect it to be close, but I think I'm going to take the Eagles 21-14 early. Chiefs vs. Chargers on Friday in Brazil. It's going to be a very defensive game played here. 2 really solid defenses. Can LA run the ball against this Chiefs defense? We'll see with the rookie running the ball. Can we see Herbert manage the game the way Harbaugh wants it to be? I think if Herbert settles in and goes with Harbaugh's game plan, they could give the Chiefs an L in the first game. Will the Chiefs be able to get their 3 explosive plays to win this game? I'm looking at a guy like Xavier Worthy. Can he have a couple of explosive plays in this game with Rashee Rice out? We will see, but I think overall I'm going to take the Chiefs here 17-14 in Brazil. Dolphins versus Colts. Daniel Jones time in Indy. I don't know what to expect from it. I don't. Daniel Jones could come out, revive his career, or it could be a massive dud. Tyreek Hill on his revenge season. We'll see if he can return to normal form. I feel like last year he wasn't producing. I think it will be an A-Chain masterclass this season, and Tyler Warren will be known after this game. Tyler Warren, I think he's one of the best players that come out of this draft class, and it showed from Penn State last season. I am going to take the Dolphins 28-17 in this game. Panthers versus Jaguars. Exciting game to see how these quarterbacks have progressed in the offseason. Bryce Young has an offense now with an amazing prospect receiver in Tedaroya McMillan from Arizona. Liam Cohn coaching for the Jags now. Take the pressure off of Trevor. Let Etienne and Bigsby eat. That's what Liam Cohn likes to do. He likes to run the ball and then do some play action in there. So, there's a lot of opportunity for this backfield to succeed under this offense. Can the Panthers get their fair share of stops or turnovers in this game? J.C. Horn, Derek Brown, they have the guys to do that. I find it hard to see the Panthers win this game if they don't really create a turnover. But it is Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence is prone to turning over the ball. But overall, I am going to take the Jags 24-20. Buccaneers versus Falcons. Can Baker successfully beat the Falcons? It swept last season. The Bucs were swept last season against the Falcons. Tough. How will the offense look under Josh Grizzard, the new offensive coordinator for the Bucs? Will Penix continue his rise from the end of last season? At the end of last season, he started to show that he was the right decision over Kirk Cousins. And also, for all you fantasy heads, Kyle Pitts. What will Kyle Pitts produce this year? I feel like every year people just pick him on fantasy, hope and pray that he'll produce, and he simply has not done that at all. So I think Penix is gassing him up a little bit. I think there is a connection there, so we will see week 1. But this Falcons defense is very dangerous. James Pierce Jr. coming in, Michael Williams, coming in as well, and AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates. They have a lot of great playmakers on that defense. But I think I'm going to take the Bucs overall, 31-28 over the Falcons. Cardinals versus Saints. I think this is my lock this game this week. The Cardinals, I think, are going to curb stomp the Saints. I don't think it's going to be close. Kyler Murray has young weapons around him. Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner, Trey McBride, those are his playmakers. But can Spencer Rattler put it together with this Saints squad? They have a speedy Saints team over there. So Arizona could also get burnt. But I think overall I'm going to have the Cardinals winning 35-21 over the Saints. Raiders versus Patriots. Drake May, year 2, sophomore year. Will he struggle? We do not know. I think Drake May is very poised, and I don't think it will happen to him. But again, sophomore year, we never know. I take that into account heavily. But there is new weapons on this offense. Stephon Diggs, Travion Henderson. They have some pieces now. Can Drake May get those players the ball? I think that will be very important for them. Pete Carroll and Geno Smith in Raiders gear now. Ashton Deanty, and they have young speedsters on this offense. Which offense is going to shine more in this game? They have solid defenses, both of them. I think I am going to take the Patriots. I think they have a very solid roster this year. I'm going to take them 14-10 over the Raiders. Steelers versus Jets. 2 new homes for QBs Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields. Aaron Glenn runs the Jets this year. Completely new look for the Jets. Pittsburgh's under a lot of pressure to win early. We make offseason moves. You get Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Darius Slay. You trade Minka. You get Jalen Ramsey. There's a lot of moves, a lot of moving pieces for the Steelers, and they have a lot of pressure to win early because, they're giving Pittsburgh fans a hope at winning something and not going 9-8 like they always do. Pittsburgh defense is held to a high standard after the offseason additions. And, I think I'm going to take 20-14 Steelers win that game. Justin Fields, I think, will play solid, but it won't be enough. Giants versus Commanders. Giants' new pass rush is going to show early. They have the best front seven in the league, no doubt about it. Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and a few others. They are insane on that pass rush. Giants will try to extend drives to give defense rest and keep Jaden Daniels off the field. Does Russell Wilson have anything left in the tank? Honestly, I don't think so. I think they should start Jackson Dart. I think that until they start Jackson Dart, the Giants' offense will look stagnant and they won't perform well. Jackson Dart is very talented, and I think he should be starting right now. But I am going to take the Commanders 17-14 over the Giants. Bengals Browns. This is a really weird game here. Obviously, the Bengals, they put $2 into their defense every single year. So, yeah, obviously there's going to be defensive struggles of the Bengals. It'll show this game. The Bengals are going to struggle on defense. Joe Burrow and the offense has to score 28 points a game to win games this season. That's my prediction. 28 points a game. The Browns can get stops defensively, but are they going to be able to go down the field and score with their QB situation? I think so. Browns do not have the strongest offense by any means. So, now the matchup is, the Bengals, they get a couple stops. The Bengals, they got that. Based on the matchup, the Bengals have the upper hand. I am going to take the Bengals 24-17 over the Browns. 49ers versus Seahawks. Another divisional matchup. Can Sam Darnold perform like he did last season? Latter half of last season didn't play so hot, but in a Vikings uniform, overall, he played awesome, phenomenal. Can he replicate that on the Seahawks? Will we see the Niners teams succeed after all their departures from the season? I think Juwan Jennings, he just signed some type of incentive bonus. He's a sleeper, man. He's a sleeper. I think he could be a wide receiver 1 somewhere. Hot take. We got a healthy CMC back. Is Brock Purdy going to be worth his new contract? The Seahawks have a balanced team. There's a lot of question marks in this game. But I am going to take the Seahawks winning over the Niners 28-24. That defense of the Seahawks, I'll tell you, fast. Devon Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen is all you have to name. And, Devon Witherspoon, I'm very high on them. So, yeah, I'll take the Seahawks over the Niners. Titans versus Broncos. Bo Nix, year 2. The Broncos have a stacked defense and will be way too much for Cam Ward in his first game. The game will not be close. Broncos prove why they are a threat in the AFC after this game. Broncos win 35-14. Lions versus Packers, a tone setter for the NFC conference. 2 of the best teams in that conference. Will the Lions look the same without their coordinators? Can the Packers make a statement early in the season? Matthew Golden, early impressions. I know we talked about that earlier, but shocker. I'm going to take the Packers over the Lions game 1, 27-24. Texans versus Rams, 2 teams in a similar scenario. CJ Stroud, bounce back year maybe. Nico Collins is back at it. I think he'll perform very well. Nick Chubb is going to be carrying the load since Joe Mixon is out. How will the Titans O-line look without Tunsil? That's the biggest question mark for this Texans team on offense. Can the Rams create a turnover? Matt Stafford, how will he look? All those questions. I think I'm going to take the Rams on this one, 21-17 over the Texans. Ravens versus Bills, Sunday Night Football, AFC Championship game, week 1. This will probably be the game of the year. In week 1, the commissioner is blessing us up on this one. Both teams are absolutely loaded. Josh Allen versus Lamar duel. Time of possession is important in these games. A lot of other factors impact this type of game because these teams are at such high calibers. It's crazy. Any explosive plays in Josh Allen's arsenal. I'm going to take the Ravens here, 20-17. And then the final game of the week to cap it off, Vikings versus Bears. Can Caleb get rid of the ball and make fast throws against a stout Vikings defense last season? I do not think so. I've heard rumors that, Caleb Williams is holding the ball way too long. He doesn't look good. But J.J. McCarthy is getting his first start. I think the QB play just in general will be very, very ugly. It will not look pretty. Which one will step up and play better is a question. Bears additions like Joe Thuney can help Caleb perform better, just offensive line in general. That's one thing I did take away, and that's why I'm giving Caleb Williams some type of slack from last season. Was he didn't have an offensive line? He was sacked a lot last season. A Ben Johnson ran offense can be lethal with this squad, though, with DJ Moore, Luther Burden. You have DeAndre Swift. You've got good playmakers on this Chicago Bears team. So I think Ben Johnson has some stuff to work with and some plays up his sleeve against this Vikings squad. But I think we forget that the Vikings defense is just so good. So I'm going to take the Vikings 21-10 in this game. So that caps it off for episode 1 of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I appreciate you guys for listening this far. I'm excited for this football season, and we'll see next Thursday. How my predictions pan out here. Again, I am your host, Caden Aguiar, and Fifth Quarter is out.